This time on the Highland Woodworker.
Oak's considered a furniture wood, but could you make an instrument and how would it sound? That's the kind of thing I love to do is blend instruments, try different mediums to see how are they going to come out, what are we going to get when we do that.
Master Luthier Geoff Wymer shows us many of his notable pieces. Plus, learn how a special gift carved a whole new path in his woodworking journey. Then, Popular Woodworking Magazine has a simple solution to getting a straight edge on the table saw. All of this and more, this time on the Highland Woodworker. Hello, I'm Charles Brock and I'm a Highland Woodworker. We're here in the Highland Woodworker online classroom. Have you heard about our new membership program? It allows you to access dozens of full-length classes taught right here by some of the biggest names in woodworking. For more information, go to highlandwoodworking.com. Then take a look at their online catalog. They have all the best tools for your workshop and great service too. Geoff Wymer started wood carving later in life, and what started out as an interest quickly grew into a passion. However, he never strayed from his musical roots as a master luthier, making some of the most unique stringed instruments you'll ever see. Let's get to know Geoff now in our moment with a master. Well, Geoff Wymer, usually our masters are in their shops and we go visit them. But this one's a little different. You said you were going to bring your shop to us. Well, where is it?
Well, that's interesting. My shop I did go ahead and bring with me this time, so I thought we could share and work together in it.
Oh, amazing. Yes, definitely amazing. So this is, now you're a luthier and a wood carver, and so this is your shop.
This is my luthier shop. We took an old Harmony Sovereign that wasn't restorable and came up with the idea of let's build a shop inside the guitar. And so I had a lot of fun reproducing a lot of the pieces that are actually in my shop. My shop is very small. It's an 8x12 little shed that I work out of, so there's not a lot of room in there, a little bit more than here, but not a whole lot of room. So I took a lot of pieces. The little bandsaw is very much like the one in my literal shop, colored, painted the same way and so forth. Took a lot of the tools, some jigs and things that would be in the shop, and it was just a real fun project to do actually during COVID to kind of work on it and to create a luthier shop inside a guitar.
Well, Geoff is a luthier and primarily a wood carver. That's how you got started. There must be somebody that really inspired you.
Yes, I jokingly say that my woodworking career started before I was born. That God kind of worked that out. That my grandfather came home from World War II, and he came home with souvenirs, titles like POW, MIA, had shrapnel in his head and a Purple Heart on his chest.
Wow.
And when he came home, he got a job working at a custom cabinet shop. And I think he did that his whole career, but he loved it enough that he also had a personal shop. And so when I was a kid and I would go to visit, whether it was his personal shop or his job shop, he would set me down in the corner with a hammer and some nails and the scrap pile, and I would just play like they were Legos. And so that was kind of my beginning. And later in life, he went on to restore furniture when he was older. And I really think that was his therapy from the war, was taking old broken furniture and fixing them. And he'd always used to joke that, God and a carpenter way before him was in the business of fixing things, fixing broken things.
Great story. Now, you said this little box is special.
Yes, that box is this is my personal woodworking beginnings. My mother, at the age of 31, my mother brought that to me when I was 31 and said, hey, I know as a kid you like to draw and do two-dimensional. This is a little carving kit that somebody gave me, an X-Acto knife set. Have you ever considered carving and doing 3D stuff? And so that's where I got started, right there with that little piece there. And I just kind of got some wood and just started knocking away at it. With that little X-Acto knife, I Took this little guy, a character out of a children's book, and carved him. I jokingly say, you can tell he was a rectangular piece of wood, because he still is. I just didn't know what I was doing at the time, and so I did carving. Now, over a couple of years, I went back to, he was an extra in this children's book. I went back to the main character and wanted to show kind of how my carving skills had advanced. So I made the main character out of the book. His name is Punchinello. And he's the main character. He's a lot more moving parts and a lot more three-dimensional.
So many people think that the first project has to be something kind of amazing, but this is amazing that you could find something to build and then start making the parts, and they all move. And even a parent and one of their kids, this would be something for them to get together and start working together, start woodworking.
Definitely. I am a teacher by profession. I teach 6th through 12th grade mathematics. And so one of my largest passions is you can do this, because kids say, well, I could never do that. I couldn't play an instrument. I couldn't make something with wood. And yes, you can. You're going to take it a little piece at a time, and you'll start out small, whether it's little animals, Noah's Ark kind of animals that you can, oh, well, I chopped a leg off, no loss, let's start another one. And you can play around and learn. And yes, hopefully over time, there's an advancement and a development and a passion that goes into it. But yeah, anyone can start at any level.
I'm going to try to put Punchinello right back here on his perfect little stand. Well, Geoff, you've got animals that are beautifully scaled and proportioned with lots and lots of detail. So you have really advanced your carving skills. Just beautiful. And you've got Noah's Ark and some pipes that are just out of this world. Jewelry. There's so much you can do if you just get started.
I definitely think that's the case. You need to pick something and go ahead and say, okay, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not have it come out perfectly, to have some rectangular to it. But it's a starting point, and it kind of sparks that interest, and then you can go as far as you want. And then you find mentors that will help you along the way. There are clubs and guilds and things like we have down in Birmingham, the Alabama Woodworking Guild. There are places that there are veterans that will come in, which is wild that I'm now on that side of the coin, that will come in and say, look, we can help you and you can do this. And they'll get you the supplies and they'll teach you the techniques. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
We definitely live in an age where the resources are abundant. And if you want to become a woodworker or a carver or a luthier, there are ways to get started. Get started small, build something, and then build the next thing. Now, here's something, a church. You built a church.
Yes, sir. That was when I lived in the Nashville area in a small town called Mount Pleasant. There was a little old Episcopal church there, and not even sure where the idea came from, but I scaled down the church and set out to carve and make the church. Now, this is my longest. I started when I was 31 as a wood carver, got the little box. So it's been 22 years. This one took me 17 to carve because now not all up straight, but a lot of times sitting down because I carved every brick and I painted every brick and all, but it was kind of just a fun project to go through.
Well, and I see how you continue to repurpose things. Like this is sandpaper, isn't it?
It is, yes, yeah. That is sandpaper.
And you hand cut shingles, I believe, and they're just beautiful. Of course, all the bricks are all hand cut. And I understand they're all hand painted too.
They are. I tried lots of different ways and repainted because I went, well, if I could do the background and then kind of stencil across the top, and I just couldn't get the old kind of individualized look. So yes, I went back and one by one painted each brick.
Well, that is tremendous attention to detail. We need to go see some of your stringed instruments. I understand they are from all kinds of instruments, and some of them are strange like you've never seen before.
Definitely. I like to repurpose, and I like to push the boundaries. Okay, this instrument's made out of this typically. Well, what would happen if I make it out of that? Or what if I took a couple of instruments and the pros that I see in each of them and tried to integrate them together?
Let's go look. This is fun. Well, Geoff, Here's some beautiful musical instruments. What was first? Kind of tell me the story of.
Well, I did the wood carving that we had already looked at and talked to, and that was kind of a great thing. Well, when I moved to the Nashville area and got involved teaching at a visual and performing arts school, I went to Gibson and got to tour with my kids and had a great relationship with him. And I'm looking at these solid body wooden guitars, and of course my woodworker's going, wait a minute, that's wood, I carve wood. And so I got talking with the technical to find out, is it possible? What does it do to affect the sound? And the body is very incidental to the rest of the guitar as far as the sound, on an electric at least. And so so then I decided that I could come in and I could customize electric guitars. So I could go in and relief cars. It's a store-bought guitar that I tape off, and then I go down inside. Oh man, that first scrape, when you take that scraper and you dig through that finish, it's just a painful sound till you get used to it. But then you carve down in, and then you can do designs and custom orders and things like that.
Well, that is just beautiful. And this is the Excalibur with the knight.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I do try and theme them. I've had a lot of them that have different themes. Like I did the Jolly Roger is one of my guitars that had the skull and crossbones, and it was a black flag flowing through the Telecaster, things like that. This was a little bit more in-depth custom, where it's a traveler guitar. It is a store-bought guitar, but it had a basic, very simple armrest. And so I went back and shaping it like a Stratocaster to put it the same size. I carved the mahogany dragon, even put where the holes here so your cord could come through and plug in there through the dragon. So yeah, and it bolts on and comes off, so it's easy to transport and such. But yeah, it's a way that I could take and integrate my wood carving. And this was the beginning of becoming a luthier, or starting to look at integrating woodworking with instruments and my love of music.
Wow. Well, kind of looking at more today, you moved from that into actually making some instruments. Tell me about
I did.
these.
I found a luthier, a veteran luthier, Van, and he kind of took me under his wing. We're back to this idea of mentors and people that will help you. And that resonates real well with me, no pun intended with the music, but but to have a mentor that will come alongside and teach you. This is one of the concert ukuleles I made, and one of the things I like to do is push the boundaries. I call this my fat boy because he's wider than normal than a ukulele would be. But that's because I said I want to make the front out of oak. I have great resources to oak. This is old antique flooring, great quarter-sawn tiger stripe. And I said, what would it sound like? Oak's considered a furniture wood, but could you make an instrument and how would it sound? What would it be like? So I started messing with it. I enlarged the sound hole. I adjusted the thickness of the top. I made it thicker to kind of compensate for the fact that I was using a very porous, hard wood for my soundboard. So that's the kind of thing I love to do is blend instruments, try different mediums to see how are they going to come out, what are we going to get when we do that.
And to repurpose.
Yes.
Reuse. That is just a nicest looking ukulele. And is this just a ukulele?
It is. It's just a concert ukulele.
And it's very playable.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So
well,
that's my personal one that I play all the time. So.
And now this is kind of a combination, isn't it?
This is. I've named it a Dulcetaran. So
Excuse
it is
me now.
A Dulcetaran.
Dulcitar, like a dulcimer?
A guitar and a mandolin.
So Dulcetaran.
Dulcetaran. Yeah. It has the string configuration of a dulcimer, the 4-string configuration of a dulcimer. It's an A-style, old early 1900s A-style mandolin body. And then I integrated the rest of the frets to make it chromatic like a guitar, so that you have the ability to play in any key, but you have the simplicity of a dulcimer, and then the mandolin body brought out the resonation.
So the dulcimer gives it that kind of drone, makes it easier for anybody to learn to play it.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Makes it a simpler instrument to play. It's compact. It kind of mixes sounds and all a little bit between the instruments. So yeah, it's been a great kind of combination that I'm still refining. Every time I build one, I want to go back and go, okay, I think I would do this a little different next time. The front is repurposed. That's from an old 100-year-old piano. That's the soundboard out of an old repurposed piano. So that was a great use that I found for old pianos that people are no longer able to repair. And it just makes for a great instrument.
Geoff, there's something to my right here. Looks like a violin. What is that?
It's very similar to a violin. It's actually called a violele is what I've named it, because it was a violin. It was a factory-made violin. And I cut the head and neck off of it and then recarved a new neck and head, larger and fretted like a ukulele. So it is a concert scale ukulele with a violin body. And then I actually had one of my students who was in auto collision paint it for me. So I prepped it all and took it to him and said, I have an unusual, I know you normally paint cars, but could you paint my violele for me? So that was a great kind of opportunity to involve a student and get him interested in it also.
Wow. So there are really no rules, is that right?
In my shop, there pretty much aren't any rules. If I can give it a try, and I've got the resource of the wood, repurposing all, as we've talked about, often plays into what I decide to do, what I have available. And so, yeah, if I go, I like this about this, and I like this about this, I wonder if there's any way I can marry those together and come up with something that's better that maybe someone hasn't really, developed.
Later in the show, Geoff shows us how cooking instruments can be turned into musical ones. Plus, Popular Woodworking shows us a smooth move when working with rough wood. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Highland Woodworker.
I'm just an average, down-to-earth woodworker. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably about a 5. But one place I score a perfect 10 is right here, and I plan on keeping all 10. That's why I have a SawStop table saw. And there's more. Plenty of power, superior dust collection, and absolute accuracy. These features have made it the best-selling cabinet saw in America. Let Highland Woodworking help you put a SawStop in your shop.
Highland Woodworking stocks a wide selection of Rikon power tools, known for their innovative design and rugged durability. Highland has sold thousands of Rikon's industry-leading bandsaws with sizes to fit every woodworking need, from the compact, affordable 10-inch model to competitively priced 14 and 18-inch models. Shop us also for Rikon's reliable planers, lathes, and professional low-speed grinder, all with an exceptional 5-year warranty. Rikon Power Tools. Meet the Bora Centipede, the lightweight and portable workshop table that supports up to 3,000 pounds, stores in a small space for tight shops, and opens into a work table to bring your work to a comfortable height. This makes the perfect companion for your track saw. Comes with X cups and hold downs to secure your work. Just add the Bora workbench top and you've got a great auxiliary table anywhere in your shop. Upgrade your shop today.
There's 4 words that Lee Tools lives by. 4 words that mean quality joinery to take your projects to the next level. Whether it's dovetails, box joints, or mortise and tenon. And we'll even help you clean up. Those 4 words: better tools, better results.
I've been using Forest products for years. They're the maker of the Woodworker 2 saw blade. Gives great cuts on your table saw every time. Now I have a chop master for my miter saw. I have a dense piece of 2x2 walnut, and as you see, it cuts like butter, leaving clean cuts at 90 degrees. Forest, the cuts will make you smile every time.
happens oftentimes in the shop when we're working with rough lumber that's rough on both edges, so it's really not suitable to run up against the table saw fence. And a perfect solution for this would be an edge joiner, but a lot of people don't have an edge joiner. So one of our readers, C.R. Davis, came up with this creative tip. He uses one of these commercial edge clamps that he's modified by cutting the nib off one end. And he clamps this onto the edge of the workpiece. And it creates a straight edge that he can run up against the fence. As you can see, it's a great solution for joining the edge of your piece at your table saw.
Featherboard is a safety item. It's supposed to hold your stock against the fence. Featherboards can really be a problem trying to adjust them, make your cut and everything. Sometimes they were just more trouble than they were worth. But along comes the Hedgehog. It even looks like a hedgehog. You put it on your table saw, your band saw, or your router table. It fits in a 3/4 inch or a 3/8 inch miter slot, and you adjust it about 2 inches back from the blade. So you'll want to put it about here. You put your stock in place, line up your cut, and then rotate the Hedgehog into place. Once you've got it against the board, against your stock, you just tighten up on it. Now, here you are ready to cut. Let's see if it works. The Hedgehog, problem solved. Coming up, making a banjo with Geoff Wymer. You're watching the Highland Woodworker. Whiteside Machine Company has been in business for over 30 years providing customers with quality router bits. Fine Woodworking Magazine has declared Whiteside router bits best overall and best value when compared against 17 other brands. No matter the router application, they have the type and profile of carbide router bit you need. When you put a Whiteside router bit to work in your shop, it is guaranteed to make you smile. can't make it to Highland Woodworking in Atlanta, Georgia, you can shop online at highlandwoodworking.com. They're great at getting what you want to your shop quick. Let Highland's legendary wood slicer resaw blade help make it easy for you to get great results sawing thick lumber into thinner boards. The wood slicer is designed to cut much faster, smoother, and quieter than ordinary bandsaw blades. You'll be amazed at how smooth a surface you'll get with a wood slicer. Its variable tooth pattern greatly reduces noise and vibration. Order a wood slicer from Highland Woodworking for your bandsaw today. Well, I understand you're going to show us how to make one of your mutations, I guess. What have you got for us here?
Well, this is the pan, Joe, and rightfully named because it can be a bread pan, a cake pan, a bundt pan, just whatever type of pan. It's a great entry-level instrument for people either starting woodworking and or starting luthier work, interested in music. We simplify it down to the very basic level.
So it doesn't need to be as complex as this.
Correct, correct. You don't have to have special tools. You don't have a locked scaling distance. You have things like that. You've got some freedom.
And this one, I believe,
This one is a production. I did not make this. My son made this. This was the first time I was teaching him and trying to show how that someone at the age of 14, 15 could make their first instrument. So he completely designed this. It was funny that my saw burned just a little bit on the back when I was cutting this. And my son went, "Daddy, I like that. Can we make it burn more?" And I was like, okay, wow, I've never tried that, but let's see if we can go back and figure out a way to burn it more, because he liked the look. Gives you lots of personalization. He designed everything about it and said, okay, this is the pan I want. This is the colors I want. This is how I want it distressed. And it offers the opportunity for people. It's like the carrot in front of the mule that says, hey, ooh, I want that, I want that. So once they get started and they go, ooh, but I want it to look like this, that helps through the times when you're like, this is tough, or I don't know, and this is new to me. So I think that's a great way to help. And then the ukulele you just showed is my son several years later, after he's advanced and so forth and made a real...
So a piece of all thread becomes the bridge, and the frets are actually...
just super glued toothpicks.
How about that?
You don't
Can't get any more basic than that. So things that you find...
You rob the kitchen to build your instrument.
Oh, I love robbing the kitchen. My wife doesn't, but I've done it plenty of times. Well, tell me about what we're going to do now.
All right, what I did is I brought some samples of ones that I've started. This is a cake pan, a Lightning McQueen cake pan, so found at the thrift store. And so a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, it's turned upside down, traced, and then cut out. Whether you're using a coping saw, whether you have access to a bandsaw, a jigsaw, you've got lots of opportunities. When I'm doing this with kids, then they especially get to spend the time getting familiar with the wood because they've got a piece of sandpaper. And they're owning it as they're sanding it, and then as they're thinking through how do they want to decorate it? How do they want to design the piece? Do they want to use a Sharpie? Do they want to use little small acrylic paint, craft paints? How do they want to personalize it? Here's another example that's just a little pie pan. Looks more like an offering plate, I told somebody recently. But yeah, I took a piece, I didn't have regular plywood, but I had some of this beadboard. And so I went, I can trace this and cut this out. This will make a great top. So that's where you start. You go to the thrift store, you repurpose, you build some pans. You buy some pans.
All right, but you got to have a neck. And that's kind of where the woodworking comes in. And then in the end, some functionality. How do you get there?
All right, great questions, great questions. Finding some sort of piece of hardwood. You also have the freedom there that I don't have to go out and buy exotics and so forth. Yeah, they're great, and if you've got that option, that's wonderful. I don't begrudge anybody that. But for the beginner, if you've got pallet material, if you've got something that you can cut down to 1 1/4 by 1/2 inch, you're getting ready to start. So a simple table saw, and you've got the basics of a neck. From there, you're gonna, after you've tin snipped and cut a hole to make that fit, your neck will sit down inside the pan. Now we need to figure out the length and how we're going to set this up.
And that's important.
Yeah, very much so. And there are tips that come along the way. One thing I've found is I start at the head end and I work my way back to where I want things to end up. So typically I'm going to come out, I'm going to pick 5 inches because that gives me enough room to pick whatever style tuner I want. If they're single separate tuners, then I can go 4, but I give myself 5 inches. We can even decorate if we want. So I'm going to come out 5 inches. I'm going to set myself up and say, okay, that's where I want my head. From there, my fretboard and the playing part of the instrument will happen. So the next step is, I know that I'm looking for about 14¼ inches for my scale. So that's going to fall right about there. Now, because it's a floating bridge, as we talked about, I have the freedom to kind of move that a little bit as needed, so I don't need the precision. So what I've now got to decide is where on this pan do I want the bridge in the middle? Most of the time you would want it toward this end. So I'm going to adjust this, coming in 14¼ to where I basically want my bridge to fall. So I think I like it right about there. Once again, this is the freedom of this instrument. I've got a 2-inch space there that if it's somewhere in there, it's only going to affect my decorating of the top. Okay. And I've got the freedom. So I'm going to come in and say, okay, I want 14¼ That's where I'm going to end up. So I'm going to set my, let's put it in the right place there. And that's going to tell me now where do I want to cut off the neck. So if I'm going ballpark there, then I know I need this to sit down inside and attach to my pan, so that's where I need to cut it off. So that gives me the layout of my overall neck. Then I take another piece of wood. This is going to be my fretboard. So what's going to happen is now that I've laid that out basically where I want it, I know between there and the body I need a fretboard. So I'm going to come along and say my fretboard needs to cut off right about here. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to go back and fine tune that with sandpaper by hand. And when you're starting with a kid or a beginning woodworker, you know, for them to get up close and personal and work the wood by hand, whether it's with a little knife or with a sanding block, is a great way for them to find out how the wood works and, you know, is a hardwood and how do I sand it as they round off the neck and such. They're getting familiar with the properties of wood. So I think that's a great way for them to start off before they get into advanced things of mixing different exotic woods and bending wood and so forth. So yeah, now we're ready to go to the table saw, cut up our fretboard. All right, what we're going to do here at the saw is we're going to take those measurements we made of the fretboard and the neck, and we're going to just cross cut there. We're going to line up our pencil marks, and we're going to just cross cut and cut it there so we can go back and then dry fit the banjo together.
So, how do you put it together?
All right, great question, and that's the next phase in this, and there are some places at this point where you fine tune. Often I tell people when you start out, you know, I don't have a board stretcher in the back of the shop, so we're going to leave a little extra material and give ourselves some room to go back and trim. Okay. It's just the easiest when you're first starting, you know. As a math teacher, if they're doing a math problem, it's like, okay, we're going to play with this and get to an answer, and then there's a check we can go back. So here we're going to measure twice before we cut once, so we're going to play with that. So we've cut this down to the size we want, so we're going to get it set down in here where we would want it. Now, in this case, I have a taper to the pan. Now, I'm going to have much less of a taper here. If this were going on this instrument, I would have a different adjustment. And that's the thing with banjos is, you know, I can say this is the technique, but depending on what pan you pick, it's going to adjust what you need to do. This case, it's going to get a little bit of a round, but stay perpendicular. In this case, we are pretty straight, but we're going to need to taper the end. So the next step would be to go back either block sanding with a saw, with a knife. It depends on the resources of the woodworker. We're going to taper that so that we can run a screw and attach it from this end, and that will lock in. And technically, we could lock it as is, drill through, shoot a wood screw through, and lock it in place like that. So if the resources weren't there to knock it down, that's the beauty of this instrument is you have freedom to adjust to the tools you have. That's why it's a great starter. And then you create the wish list of, you know, but if I had this tool.
So it's got to fit in this profile right here. It's kind of rounded over, and and tapered.
Well, in this case, the easier thing on this instrument would be, just because this pan is, it's so narrow here, that we're going to stop right here. We have set it up to come here. So all I need it to do is get enough material there that when I screw the screw in here, I don't warp the metal.
Okay.
I can still run it flush enough, because we're going to put 2 screws in the top to hold the top on, to connect it to the top, and then we would rivet 4 corners here to attach the top to that. So you attach the neck here, then you're going to screw the top down to the neck and then rivet it to the board. So, or you could even, if you don't have a rivet gun, you can use a little nut and bolt with a little bolt behind. And so that's going to attach there. 2 screws through here will attach it. And like I said, technically we could attach it as is. So if you didn't have the tool, you didn't have a belt sander to knock that down, or a band saw. If you're a beginning woodworker, you don't have to go, I can't do this. I don't have the tools.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you can. You can still make this work. This would still attach, screw through there, and have the strength to work. Because we've attached it at enough points, you can still, 3 strings, that it will handle the tension. Then the next thing is we're going to curve this if we want just a little bit, and we will glue and attach our fretboard on. That gives us the height we need to run our strings across the toothpicks, the nut, and down to the bridge.
Okay, so how do you know where to cut to attach the toothpicks?
Well, once again, the beauty is we don't have to cut. Unlike in a more advanced instrument, we're just going to glue toothpicks to it.
Oh, wow.
So they glue to the top. They super glue to the top.
Yeah.
So what we need, obviously, is a fret scale, like calculator. We need a go-by to set there to just mark the place. There is a precision there. That is the one place that there's a lot of precision. Now, the beauty is, if I'm doing a 14 1/4, there are lots of calculators online you can go to. There's several companies that have fret calculators. And if you go in and say, I'm doing a 14 1/4 scale, it will tell you from the nut exactly where to put the toothpicks.
All right.
Now, typically, if I'm teaching the class or showing somebody, I have a little piece of scrap wood that we lay up there. They mark one side, they flip it over, they mark the other, and then they go to glue and toothpicks.
Yeah.
So, and then the toothpicks just glue. The other great thing is, this is what's called a 0 fret. We put a toothpick at the end so that this nut is not actually a nut. The toothpick is what starts the scaling. This is just a guide, that's just a guide for the strings. So we take a little piece of wood, we can cut it, we can burn it. I have a little burner that I cut in, makes it really quick to cut 3 notches. And that's a great way to do it.
And then get a tuner.
Yep, either a lock set from a guitar, and the beauty is, if you're gonna make more than one, you buy a set of the 6, you do one turned one direction, and you turn the other, the left hand turned one way, the right turned the other, and you can build 2 of them out of one set
2
of tuners.
banjos out of one set.
There you go.
Yeah, drill the holes, and then
you're ready to start making some noise. And because it's banjo tuned, which means we are missing a fret here, 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 and here on the chromatic scale, we have whole step, half, whole step, half, which means we have the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We don't have any extra notes. So it's very simple for a beginning player, because it's open tuned, and because we have missing frets, that you can't play a wrong note. So it makes it much more that. Now, this is when they, as far as music, have to learn at least how to tune. And you can find a tuner app for your phone. Talking about repurposing, this is actually the tongue off of tongue and groove flooring. And I found that if I cut the tongue off instead of throwing it away, it makes for a great bridge.
Yeah.
So instead of all thread. So that's another alternative.
Well, I've got to make one of these. And I have a new granddaughter. As she comes along, we've got to get together in the shop and do one and play and maybe dance too. Thank you so much, Geoff Wymer.
It was wonderful. It was great to be here. I love sharing my passion for woodworking and for music.
Improve your woodworking experience. Sign up for Wood News Online, a monthly newsletter showcasing the latest news, tips, and classes Highland Woodworking has to offer. By signing up, you'll receive the latest episode of the Highland Woodworker, special store promotions, and Wood News Online delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Highland Woodworker. Be sure to check us out on social media, and until next time, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker.